What's the first time
was a
you
good fit.
being involved in Clemson football? You were saying
1970.
that was as a
Yeah.
fan, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I was a little kid. We moved to Seneca and actually went to, I think my first game in Death Valley was a South Carolina-Clemson game. So,
And then you went from there as a sports journalist and covered them for years?
yeah, well, I worked for the Independent and actually covered University of Georgia 2 separate times, but then I got a job at Orange and White, which is owned by the Independent, and I worked for the Orange and White basically for 20-something years, full-time and stringer. I was sports editor of the Clemson student newspaper for 3 years. So Beverly, she's persuasive. So I spent a little time researching, and I got some good folks coming. So I'm real excited about that. It'll be a very quick hour. A lot of great stories in this rivalry. Unbelievable stuff, and that really gets underplayed, and a lot of people, especially in this state, feel like this rivalry is it should be a bigger deal nationally because it really is special.
You've covered a lot of sports for a long time. What makes this rivalry so important to just the whole makeup of the upstate and the state in general?
Well, usually they point to the fact that South Carolina doesn't have any pro sports. I think it's real interesting in some of the reading I did. I knew about Ben Tillman and the effect that he had of starting Clemson, but I didn't realize that it was such a real fight. It was he fought it, and he quit for a while, and then he came back. He got Mr. Clemson to leave him the land and the will, and he finally pushed it over the finish line. And so it started contentious, and it's been that way ever since. So, but yeah, I think it's less now than it used to be. But of course, when I was in school, it was culture versus agriculture, and now that Clemson's got 30-something thousand students and traffic like Atlanta on 123, it's not as rural as it used to be.
Tell me about these 2 guys that are going to be doing this with you tonight.
Well, I got 3 guys, but I got 2 legends right behind you. Rudy Jones, who worked in Greenville for 40-something years, and is just a real good veteran sports writer. And then I got Tim Bourret coming, and Tim, known as Clemson Google, he keeps stats in his head unlike anybody I've ever seen. So we'll have a good time.
Cobb Oxford. I've been following Clemson sports since 1970. I was sports editor of Tiger for 3 years. I was a sports writer with the Anderson Independent Mail. I was a weekly guest host with Dan Scott when he was on CCP. I worked for the Orange and White full-time, which was the official IPTAY publication, as a full-time writer and stringer for 20-plus years. And I covered Clemson sports events for AP, Charleston Post and Courier, ACC Week, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and anybody else who'd write a check. Tim Bourret is known as Clemson Google. He's also known as Notre Dame Google. He's a graduate of the University of Notre Dame.
Speaking of which, when Cobb wrote a advance on the 1977 Notre Dame Clemson game, he referred to Notre Dame as the Golden BB Heads.
Yep, it's all my fault. He's never let me forget. 40-plus years as Clemson Sports Information Director. This is really impressive. He's the Dean of ACC Broadcasters. I probably should have known this. He's broadcast more than 1,200 Clemson games. Football, basketball, baseball. He's author of several books. I brought one of them with me, The Clemson Vault. He's written 2 Basketball for Dummies books with Digger Phelps.
Working on another one right now.
Working on the second one right now.
He's
written a book about the end of UCLA's 88-game winning streak at Notre Dame on January 19th, 1974, and he worked that game as a student.
I was there.
And also, he left this out, but I know this. He ran the Notre Dame basketball bookstore tournament one year. It's featured in Sports Illustrated. 700-something teams?
Only 256 when I ran it, but it's gotten up
256,
more.
okay.
Yes, we didn't have computers back then.
All right. Next to Tim is Chris White. Chris is a graduate of Furman. He's an award-winning filmmaker who has spent over a decade writing, directing, and producing a variety of feature-length and short films. He's a South Carolina football fan. And he is the producer of the video that I hope a lot of y'all got to see on YouTube, Bragging Rites.
Do you
Why?
remember that when we made that?
Quick question.
I remember that.
Quick
Yeah.
question. RITES instead.
Yeah.
What was the thinking?
Because it's religious.
Okay. All right. I got you.
But this is the first time I've seen Tim
Yeah,
Bourret since we made
I
that.
get it
Yeah.
now. I get
I
it.
remember it.
Okay. Next to Chris, very fortunate to have, excuse me, Rudy Jones. Rudy's a graduate of the University of South Carolina. He worked for 40 years for the Greenville News in Greenville, Piedmont. He covered Furman's 1988 1AA National Championship in football. He covered the 1992 Greenville Braves, one of the top minor league teams in minor league history. Who was on that team? Glavin?
Chipper Jones, just about everybody who went on to play well for Atlanta.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chipper came in mid-season, in fact.
All right.
Wow.
During his career, Rudy has interviewed Hank Aaron, Kevin Garnett, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and Chipper Jones. And also, for you college baseball fans, you need to follow Rudy. Rudy does, in my opinion, the best job in the state with college baseball. If you want to know any result in college baseball, even from USC Salkehatchie, you can find it from Rudy Jones. So we're here to unpack the rivalry, and I was thinking last night that in South Carolina we fight about barbecue sauce, fight about brand of bourbon, we fight about who's got the best potato salad at the Baptist potluck, Petty or Earnhardt. But nothing stirs us in South Carolina more than Clemson, South Carolina. Clemson leads the series 73-44-4. South Carolina won the first meeting in 1896, 12-6. Clemson won the next 4 meetings. Clemson's longest winning streak in the series is 7, twice. South Carolina's longest winning streak in the series is 5. The road team won every game in the series 1989 to 1997. That really is hard to believe, but had 111 consecutive meetings until COVID in 2020. And then I did a little something, Tim will probably correct me, but when only Clemson is ranked, Clemson is 25-5 against South Carolina. When only South Carolina is ranked, South Carolina is 3-2 against Clemson. When both teams are ranked, South Carolina is 6-1. So that's kind of hard to believe. But I wanted to start with the documentary started with Ben Tillman, and Tillman Hall. I heard of Ben Tillman. Yeah, Ben Tillman helped create Clemson, but South Carolina and Clemson got off on the wrong foot very early. Ben Tillman did a lot of fighting to help create Clemson University. So, Chris, you got anything you can add to that?
You left off his nickname, which is Pitchfork Ben Tillman,
right.
which I mean that reflects a bit of his character.
Right.
I mean he was the University of South Carolina was our first big university here, and South Carolina Clemson kind of reflect a trend that state university and the land grant, or the land grant university or the military college, which I guess Clemson was a little of both, or maybe started as a land grant college. But the idea early in the series was South Carolina was the fancy school you might go to, and Clemson was the pitchfork, Ben Tillman school, and Ben, he was a governor, right?
What's that?
Was he a governor of our state?
I don't think he was ever governor.
I mean, he went on. I mean, he had political aspirations,
Yeah.
but he kind of made, we're going to have a school up here in the upstate, and it's going to be this Clemson college. And so I think we definitely got off on the wrong foot because there was a little bit of friction and rivalry starting out.
Okay, and to follow up on that friction, 1902, both sides brought out weapons, and there was nobody hurt, but the game wasn't played again until 1909. And then this one I didn't know about, 1946, two guys from Brooklyn created counterfeit tickets.
Yeah.
Tim, do you know about this?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Go ahead.
They stormed ended up storming one of the gates in Columbia, and by the time the game started, there were fans standing next to Coach Howard, telling him what plays to call.
At that time, by the way, this is okay. So think about it. 1946. This is the first full year after World War II. This is an exciting time to. We talked to some people for the documentary that played that game, and they said you'd be getting into position to play a play, and you'd look across and say, you see a guy you knew from high school on the other team, and you'd be like, you survived the war.
Oh, wow.
Like there was an exuberance in the air around the 1946 game. One of the guys ran for a touchdown, and a fan gave him a hot dog. But the problem was these interlopers. You used to call them carpetbaggers. I don't know if we're allowed to call them that anymore. They knew this was a big game. They knew this would be a big game. Seward, who was Secretary of War, attended that game. He stood on Carolina sideline for the first part of the game and switched to Clemson in the second part. But he had just won the war, and there were, I don't know what the capacity at the Carolina Stadium at that point was. Probably 30, 40,000 people at that time. But there were 60,000 people that had bought tickets. So when you talk about storming the gates, people said, I've got a ticket. And the ticket takers were just, they don't scan your little device like they do now. They're like, well, okay, come on in. So it just kept filling up until there was barely any room to stand in that stadium. But for my money, that would be, if I could go back in time, that would be the Clemson Carolina game that I would go to, just because the thrill of having won World War II and also the joy of the players who, I think South Carolina won that game, but they didn't care. They weren't in the Pacific. They weren't in Europe anymore. They had somehow made it through. And some guys didn't. Hey, where's so-and-so from? He didn't make it. So I think that's a beautiful moment in the rivalry, that 1946 game.
61 was one of the greatest stunts ever, and it's never really gotten a whole lot of publicity. Some people know about it, but the Sigma Nu fraternity at South Carolina went to Orangeburg High and got their uniforms. Head coach Marvin Bass was in on it. Pre-game, they went in and changed into the uniforms, and they ran out on the field, and Clemson fans and the band went off, and all of a sudden these guys are stumbling around, they're dropping every ball, they're tripping over each other. It took a few minutes to realize that there was something going on, and this was in the documentary too. I had never heard this story, but it said two lines formed. One line held their thumbs like this, and the other line came up and did this like they were milking a cow. And so some Clemson people came out of the stands. There was no fight. Order was restored. But yeah, it was one of the greatest stunts of all time. And then, of course, 2004, the day after the Malice in the Palace, we had the Malice in the Valley, which ended up being Lou Holtz's last game at South Carolina. And he said after the game that he was going to be remembered like Woody Hayes. My career ended with a fight against Clemson. Of course, everybody knows that the game was always played in Columbia till 1959. And the classic picture of Frank Howard kissing Big Thursday goodbye. But when it existed, it was an unofficial state holiday. Stores closed. It was a big deal. It was the Thursday of the state fair, so it was it was special to this state. But the funniest thing I came across, I said and of course what Tim went through today, said in 1960 when the game came to Clemson for the first time, somebody said it was the most cars that had ever been driven in Clemson, South Carolina. All right, guys.
Sure was.
Little pitch and catch here.
Do we need to
What
speak
makes this
into?
rivalry special? No, I think we're good.
Okay.
The thing that makes it, I think, special is just the fact that so many people from the respective schools work with each other, and they're around each other all the time. So they have the opportunity to get on each other. Whoever has bragging rights can reinforce those bragging rights, 365 days a year. When I came to Clemson from Notre Dame, the Notre Dame Southern Cal rivalry is a big rivalry, but basically there's respect between Notre Dame fans and Southern Cal fans, but because they're out in California and the Notre Dame people are in the now, there's Notre Dame people all over the place, but basically they're not together. They're not working together. So I don't think there's the hatred in that rivalry like there is in this rivalry and Auburn, Alabama, so I think that, to me, that's the biggest difference is the geography makes it.
Chris?
That's working.
I've said a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
I'll jump
I'm
on that.
good. I think, like Tim said, folks work together, go to church together. Families are split, for lack of a better word. I remember one time.
It's not amplifying the room. It's just for the video. So we'll talk louder.
Okay. Sorry about that. I remember one time in the 70s, I believe it was, probably late 70s. I think it was in the PD area. There was an argument between a Clemson fan and a Carolina fan after the game, and one of them wound up killing the other. I believe it was the Clemson fan killed the Carolina fan. It could have been the other way. But, it was one of those things, I guess probably the ribbing got too far. And one of the first things the family said when people started contacting says, we hate this happen. It said, take this as a caution not to, it is a game like that. I think it's much more than a game sometimes in the minds of folks, and they let their mood be determined on how the game goes. For so many years, South Carolina, the state of South Carolina, has not been particularly prominent in national things, whether it be politics, athletics, whatever it may be. So when Coach Howard started having success at Clemson, that brought them on. They went to some bowl games, things like that. Of course, the national championship under Danny Ford. George Rogers winning the Heisman Trophy started bringing recognition, and as the awareness of the two programs has grown, so has the attendance. When I was a student at Carolina, the stadium seated 43,000. Now it's 77 or 78, and they'll get 80,000 in there sometimes. I was a Clemson fan growing up. They seated about 43,000. I was able to get some cardboard from a concession stand and slide down the hill because it was not packed. They used to let the high school students stand for 50 cents. That was great. I can remember running on the field after a game and seeing good and close to Bear Bryant as I am to Cobb. That was pretty neat for a kid from Travelers Rest. And, as it got more recognition, another thing too, lack of television coverage. Back then, ABC sent film crews out to like 4 games every weekend, and they put together about a 1-hour highlight show of things from there. And Clemson, Carolina never got on those things. Georgia would, maybe Georgia Tech back then, they were more prominent. But just the fact that there was more success, more recognition, started getting more people to notice this. And I think it's still a very underrated rivalry on the national scene. It has grown up, especially with what Dabo's been able to do at Clemson and the success South Carolina's had under Coach Spurrier and now under Coach Beamer. So, it's just important, it's special to everybody.
I don't know where that mic came from.
It doesn't matter.
I don't know where that mic came from. It's not mine.
Who brought this mic?
I don't think
It's the museum's mic.
Is it
That's
on?
why I asked if it was actually on.
Is it on? There,
Is
now.
it on now?
It's
How about
on
that?
now.
Okay. Sorry, I thought it was like for our videographer. Okay, I'm gonna tell. I have an idea about why this rivalry is special, and I would love to know Tim Bourret's thought on this, because you would be the person, if we were just hanging out, I might float this idea by. If I'm asking you what Christmas songs are your favorite, not Christmas carols, not Silent Night, not Away in a Manger, but if I ask you what Christmas songs come to mind when you think of Christmas songs, give me 2, 3. What are they?
Silver Bells.
Okay, Silver Bells. What?
White Christmas.
White Christmas.
Maybe it's cold outside.
Baby It's Cold Outside, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I mean, we could go down the list. Those songs became popular in the 1940s, 30s, 40s, 50s, at the dawn of the baby boomer generation. I would argue that this series is at its best kind of from that 46 game, post-World War II, to early 70s, about the time South Carolina leaves the ACC. When you think of your wistful memories of what Carolina-Clemson is, it's about 25 years of games in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. In the middle of that, Big Thursday ends. That's 1959. But the rivalry is still, like, I think we formulated our ideas about this rivalry at the same time we formulated our ideas about Christmas songs. What are the Christmas songs? Give it a month and everybody will start playing Christmas songs again, right? And they'll play the same songs you heard since you were a child. And I think this rivalry, to those of us who came up in South Carolina, I think it became legend, myth, and solidified around the same time. And if you look at those years, 1946 to 1971, when South Carolina leaves the ACC in 70-71. The rivalry was almost split down the middle. It was very even. There were 2 ties during that period. It's about a dozen games apiece in that period. And I think that's when the idea of this became really solidified. And I think that's special because that's not the same for the big rivalries, Notre Dame, USC, Michigan, Ohio State. They either were around a lot longer, but we got really solidified during that period. So that's my theory on why it does. Now, I will also say 80s, 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s is a period where the rivalry's good if your team is good. Like when Clemson has a good team, South Carolina can be a spoiler and vice versa. I think now, you guys, last year, South Carolina beat Clemson, and Clemson went on to win the ACC and went to the college football playoff. Like, I don't know that it has as much impact as it did 10, 15 years ago. But I think that golden age in the 40s, 50s, 60s is an important time that really solidifies this as a cultural institution in South Carolina.
Rudy, favorite memory, Clemson, Carolina.
I don't know. Probably the circumstances leading up to the 76 game in Clemson. In 1975, South Carolina beat Clemson 56-20. Jeff Grants, who was USC's quarterback, a really good quarterback, was still in the game at the end. He threw a touchdown pass at the end of the game and made it for the final touchdown. Coach Parker was upset. Jim Carlin said, well, if I'd have kicked the field goal, that'd have really been an insult. But anyway, Red kept that in the back of his mind. On the Friday before the 1976 game at Clemson, Red told the Clemson players a story of when he was a kid growing up against a guy named Art Springer. And he says that Art had moved to from Nebraska to Fordyce, Arkansas, where Red was, back in the probably in the 50s, I guess, maybe even earlier. And he was a boxer in the boys' club. And Red said that they would always have things going on in his yard, and he just loved to be out there with it. And one day, Red's dad put some boxing gloves on him and had him fight Art Springer. He said Art Springer beat the devil out of him. He said, I'll get you for that one of these days. So a little later, next fall, the leaves were turning. Red said they're out there kind of wrestling around. And he said, I always was strong in my legs. So he gets a hold of Art Springer, gets a hold on him, ties him up, puts a bunch of leaves on him and sets the leaves on fire. And he said that his mama saw it and came out and beat the fire out of him for doing that. Well, anyway, Red told that story to the team before the game, on the Friday before the game in 1976. Saturday of the game, Clemson does not come out onto the field to practice. Carolina fans are out there and players wondering what's going on. Clemson goes up to the soccer field and scrimmages one-on-ones. And at that time, Clemson had kind of had some trouble getting started in the game. Steve Fuller was quarterback. And he said, they get off to a terrible start. And by the time they would, catch on, they're too far behind to catch up or whatever it may be. Well, anyway, Red does all that. They go up and scrimmage, go in there, and they beat Carolina 28-9, Tim. So I think just the whole thing leading up to that, and I remember when he first told it right after the game, and a few years ago I got to write a story for the Spartanburg Herald and call him again to get it refreshed in my mind. But I just think that's just a great thing. A lot of people don't even know about that situation. Yeah. But, really that's about the time Clemson's string of dominance started, is after that Carolina win in 75. Clemson goes in. Of course, Red gets fired after that game.
His last game, yeah.
And Charlie Pell takes over and starts things, and Danny, and then on from there as they go. But really, that 75 game by Carolina probably was a big impetus in getting Clemson to, for lack of a better word, take this rivalry seriously again. So, I think that was one of them. But there have been a lot of things.
I witnessed both those games.
I did too. It was neat. It's hard for me to think about. We're talking about that game in 1975. When I was a kid, people were talking about things that happened in 1925.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I think, what in the world?
I know.
It's hard to believe.
Gosh, that was 50 years ago.
Yeah. So it's that. But, I think that whole
Memory
situation.
serves, Fuller they were still throwing late, right?
Yeah. He sent Michael Caine in to throw for a touchdown. And he said, I'm not trying to run it up, Jim. I just want you to know how it felt. And so he did. But, yeah, I think that hurt the whole situation.
Chris, your favorite memory?
I think it was 2012, 2014. The even numbers are Clemson home games. I went with my friend Mark Ligon, who's here, who lives in Pendleton. And there he is sitting by my lovely wife, Emily, it's her birthday today. So, everyone. Happy birthday, Emily. I think this sums up what the Carolina-Clemson rivalry is to me. He's a huge Clemson fan. His dad worked at Clemson. He's a Clemson fan. I'm a South Carolina fan. And I think that was my most fun I've ever had at a South Carolina-Clemson game, because Clemson won. Didn't matter to me. I was with my friend. We were rivals all the way from leaving your house to the stadium to the many tailgates we dropped in on our way to the stadium. Mark's a social. This is a person you want to know. Like he knows a lot of tailgates. And by the time we got to the stadium, I think we were both ready for the game, but he probably still has video on his phone of me just screaming for South Carolina. That's what it is. I mean, people talk about people hate each other because of this. I love this man, and I love the rivalry because we just had fun all day. We didn't come to fisticuffs that I recall. We'll post on Cobb's Facebook page. Okay, there you go.
Tim, your favorite memory?
I got two.
Okay.
And from a sports information standpoint, their favorite memories because of the impact they had on the history of the program. So one is 1980, which is the famous Orange Pants game, which was
George Rogers.
The South Carolina had George Rogers, and they were heavily favored. And Clemson was coming off a 34-7 loss.
There were rumors that Danny
and there were rumors that if Danny didn't win this game, he was going to get fired. And if you look at a 34-7 loss to Maryland, who was a big rival back then, and then a loss to South Carolina, probably a good chance that would have happened. The funny thing I remember about that game, though, is that as everything was so secretive about the Orange Pants, and Len Goff had worked with Coach Ford about that, and so they actually didn't get the pants until the morning of the game. They set them up, the equipment manager set them up, and one of Len Goff's friends came in the locker room to see him. Things were different then. But anyway, so he came in the locker room 2 hours before the game, and he saw those orange pants, and his eyes went, wide open, and Len saw him, and so Len would not let him leave the locker room because he was afraid somebody. So he had to sit in the locker room for 2 hours wait before kickoff, and he couldn't leave the locker room until the team left. I also remember what a great game Willie Underwood had. He had 17 tackles. Willie Underwood played 47 games at Clemson, never had an interception until his final game, and he had 2 that day for 101 return yards. He's still the only player in Clemson history to have over 100 return yards on interceptions in a single game. And then the other one would be the 2008 season when Dabo had been elevated to the interim status, and so he had done pretty well coming into the South Carolina game to close the regular season. And so before the game, I went down where the team comes in the West End zone, and I ran into Bill DeAndre, who was kind of number 2 in command behind Terry Don Phillips. And so he came over, kind of pushed me to the side, and told me Jim Grobe is interested in the job. Now, at the time, of course, Jim Grobe had been very successful at Clemson. He had taken Wake Forest to the ACC championship. He had just beaten Clemson. And so he was basically telling me that if Dabo doesn't win this game, he's not going to be the coach anymore.
Wow.
And so that's how important that game. Wow. I'm not saying Jim Grobe would have been the guy,
Right.
but the fact that
change was
DeAndre told me that indicated they were kind of, and he was such a respected coach too. So, and so I could have seen it happening.
The
at the
ACC
time.
championship at Wake, they need to build you a statue.
Right.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
right. That's
Yes.
They of course took mine, but mine's 1980 because it was my final game as sports editor of the Tiger my senior year, and there was a real they're playing South Carolina Saturday. I mean, they're just a real nobody cared. There was a real feeling on campus that I guess impending doom. So during the week, I got with my editorial board and I said, I know y'all think I'm crazy, but let's make a bet with the student paper in South Carolina. The loser has to put the winner's logo on their front page. So my column that Friday was basically, this team had hard luck and injuries. I think Rex Barn had 2 bad shoulders, and I mean it was just a tough year. And I said something good is due to happen for this team. And along with that column, I had a really good cartoonist, and you remember? I'm gonna tell you my backstory. Really good cartoonist, and in the cartoon, the Tiger has got his hands up, and the Gamecock has got a gun on the Tiger, and the Gamecock's shirt says, Carolina plays with a loaded .38, George Rogers. Well, the Tiger's shirt said, Clemson plays with an automatic African. And behind the Gamecock was a little bitty guy getting ready to kick the Gamecock in the rear end. Clemson's field goal kicker was Obid Oriri, who was from Nigeria. So I never will forget, we were back in the old, now they do, well, not in newspapers anymore, but back then we literally got out of a printer, waxed it, cut it. I mean, it was paste, it literally was paste up. During the paste up process, I said, hey, we can put some orange on that cartoon. You want to put some orange on that cartoon? And I said, yeah. And so they did, jersey or something, a helmet. Says, hey, you want us to put some orange on his pants? And I said, nah, I think that'd be too much. And so we didn't. And then the next day, I'm sitting in the press box, and they come to the top of the hill, and the press box kind of erupted in laughter. And some guy next to me goes, they look like a bunch of orange popsicles. Well, that was a team that we had not seen all year. It was one of the more amazing efforts I've ever witnessed, because they were down and out, and they really rose up. What was the 33 in a row before they lost in the pants?
Let's see. William wasn't 30. No, it was because remember William Perry
84.
didn't lose in the
Yeah.
84 game. Yeah,
The 84
that was the only game
South
William Perry lost at home.
That was the first game that
Yeah.
they lost in the orange pants.
Yeah.
And it also stuck in my mind. I covered a game in Chapel Hill one time, and North Carolina came out, and they're all baby blue, and the press box announcer says, Clemson goes, North Carolina's wearing all blue, but their record in all blue isn't anything special.
I got a
Dave
couple more,
Losey.
Cobb.
Yes, sir.
Mine. The 77 game, Clemson down in Columbia. Clemson got up to a 24-0 lead, and it was
That's the catch.
it was a
crazy game.
rout. Then all of a sudden, somebody from Carolina, seemed like it might have been Spencer Clark, I'm not sure, but they throw him a little pitch, and he kind of bobbles it, catches it, and takes off for like a 70-something yard touchdown. Carolina comes back, takes the lead, 27-24. Jerry Butler from Ware Shoals comes down and makes a catch and breaks Carolina's heart. Just an awesome catch. I didn't get to see that when I was working inside because somebody had put out the paper. 79. Carolina leads Clemson 13-9, and Clemson's not allowed anything offense all day. And Jay Phelps, who was when they signed him in 1975 out of Monongah, West Virginia, they thought he was going to be the next big quarterback. And for whatever reason, Jay did not pan out as a quarterback at Carolina. So his senior year, he is chosen to be the punter. And late in the game, Carolina trying to hold on. He kicks an 82-yard punt down to the Clemson 1-yard line. And Clemson does not have enough time to come out to rally. Another thing about the 1980 game, of course, George Rogers, Heisman Trophy winner, great runner, never scored a touchdown against Clemson, as I know they're proud to say, and should be proud to say.
Neither did
Or
Herschel.
Herschel, yeah. But on Willie Underwood's first interception, I can remember this play from that day is Underwood intercepts it at about the Clemson 11-yard line, and he's going to score. There's no doubt. Then all of a sudden you see coming out of the frame into the pictures George Rogers. He was not out. He was pass blocking on the play. He comes out and he knocks him out of bounds at the 23, 24-yard line. Clemson went on to score. But I just thought that said a lot about George Rogers and his heart, the way that he, easy for a guy to say, well, he scored, but he went down and stopped and tackled Underwood. I always thought that was a great thing.
The other thing about the 77 game, I was a freshman, and I was sitting in the end zone as a student, and I had on my neon orange overalls, and I never will forget, Philip Logan caught a ball between like 5 Clemson guys, and then just kind of walked into the end zone, and the noise in the stadium just grew as he headed to the end zone. And it's like Clemson's done nothing in the second half, nothing, and I didn't have any time left, and but I knew something good was going to happen. I started feeling it when Rick Weddington called a pass, which was kind of a rare event, and then I never will forget Fuller and Butler said after, we practice that all the time. I'm like, no, I don't think so. That was pretty special.
Yeah.
It was really one of the greatest catches in Clemson history. Well, we've covered some of these one-hit wonders. I had Willie Underwood, and then my other one-hit wonder was Dylan Thompson.
Yeah.
Dylan Thompson got in. Connor Shaw was hurt. Connor Shaw was 2-0 against South Carolina. Against Clemson, 2-0 against Clemson, but he missed the middle game. And Dylan Thompson came up to Clemson and directed him to a big win, ran the ball. Clemson couldn't handle him. So any one-hit wonders with you guys?
First one that comes to my mind is Howard Bartley. He was a defensive end, another guy who never had an interception in his career until his senior day game, and this was 1998, Tommy West's last game, and he had a pick six in that game, which was rare for a defensive end as it is, and he went in and that was a huge momentum swear. And now, of course, that wasn't a great a game of great teams, but it still was kind of a memorable as far as a guy who waited till his last game his senior year to have a big moment.
You got a one-hit wonder?
Phelps is the one that comes to mind for me with that punch.
Yeah. Stars. Steve Fuller. Not so good in 75, but won the next three. Charlie Whitehurst, only quarterback to be 4-0 against South Carolina. Tommy Suggs, 3-0 against Clemson. Couldn't be 4-0 because that was back when freshmen couldn't play varsity. Deshaun Watson on one leg in 2014 still stands out. And then Connor Shaw was 27-5 as a starter, 17-0 at home, and 2-0 against Clemson. So, any stars come to mind, gentlemen?
Well, I remember Dabo used to keep me informed pretty much on things, but I did not know that Deshaun Watson was playing on a torn ACL in that game until after the game. Yeah, he didn't tell anybody about that, and that is truly one of the more remarkable. If you remember, as
That
a point,
injury happened at Georgia Tech, didn't it?
right, it happened at Georgia Tech. 2 weeks before, we actually had a game against Georgia State, I think, in between, that he didn't play, and so I mean, we have obviously acknowledged that Deshaun was hurt, but didn't say to that extent.
Well, and he had surgery after that, and then
And Cole Stout had a great game against.
Stout went to the
but just to some of the things,
Orlando and acted like he was Tom Brady.
Right. If you go back and watch that 2014 game, though, it was pretty. I mean, it was one touchdown he scored leaping into the end zone, and you think now that if you look back at it, that this guy had a torn ACL and did what he did. That was Superman type stuff.
Rick Sanford comes to mind, maybe.
Yeah, great player.
Interception in the Rodney.
And Brad Edwards had a couple of big interceptions against Clemson during that time. And you mentioned Tommy Suggs. I was in the band my freshman year, 1970, and USC had won the ACC championship, only one, of course, the year before, 1969, and they were supposed to do pretty well in the next season. And it turns out they went 4-6-1. They started out with a tie to Georgia Tech, I think, and the band got to go on the road to most of the games, and I can remember, I think it was up at Maryland, and got beat at Maryland, and I remember Suggs coming off the field just throwing his helmet down, just frustrated the way the season was going. But he bounced back, and he had a really good senior season, and he's not a very big guy. No. I mean, this is back, basically back before integration, and it was a bunch of guys from in-state for the most part who were playing, and but he didn't have what you would call tremendous athletic skills just to look at him. But he's just a leader and a winner. And, they came back and had the great game the last game of the season against Clemson. Just seeing him progress through the season as he went on.
Chris, any stars?
I mean, from the South Carolina perspective, I'd have to say Steve Spurrier is our guy. And your helmet design here, this is from the Spurrier, Clowney, Connor Shaw era, the red, black face mask, white helmet. This is that era where, for who knows why, Steve Spurrier just had a lot of success against Clemson. And there will be South Carolina fans that'll say, well, he really didn't care about the game, so it was low pressure every year. And he just showed up and did his thing.
Plus Clemson turned it over frequently.
Yeah, I think it's because he just kind of has an aura about him that gets in your head. If you're a player or a coach for the other team, you really want to beat him. He's kind of I don't have to tell you about that guy's character. I mean, he's.
Hey, you want to play Georgia early in the season because you've got 5 or 6 players suspended.
Yeah, there's something about him that's really irritating if you're playing against him, and lovable if he's your coach. But I think that's pretty much the South Carolina. I think we probably had our best as a star. It would be Spurrier seemed to know how to beat Clemson.
Yeah. All right, heartbreakers. We've talked about some of these. Fuller to Butler. 1984.
That's what I was.
That was
yeah,
brutal.
1984 was
21-3 lead Clemson had.
Clemson. Yeah, right. Mike Epley was the quarterback and doing well, and then there were some turnovers, and then South Carolina makes the comeback, and then they go to kick the extra point to win the game, and they miss it, but they had too many Clemson players on the field. He actually got off the field, but he ran off the South Carolina sideline, which you can't do.
Right.
You have to run off the sideline to your sideline, and so they got an extra chance to kick the point and beat Clemson 22-21.
Why did he do that? That seems like the bare minimum of football information. Which sideline you're on?
Because he felt he had to get off quickly because they were going to snap the ball.
Okay.
With 12 guys on the field, which he realized. So
he wasn't confused. He was just trying to get off field.
He was just trying to get off the field because he was actually aware that we had too many guys.
Because in the transfer portal, he might have been trying to go to the other team.
Right.
Nowadays, he might.
Yes. Yeah, you have many games these days where guys have played for both teams.
Oh, speaking of which, Tim, what was the name of the guy who played for, I guess, Clemson during World War II and then played here at Carolina, or vice versa? I can't think of his name.
Yeah. I read something about this.
No.
He was forced because of his military service. He had to play for South
He
Carolina.
was actually captain for both teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he? Yes.
Yeah.
Gary
Cox.
Yeah.
His name was Cox. Yeah, Kerry.
But he was more of a Clemson guy than a Carolina guy, right?
Yeah.
I think he was.
I think so, but after
Yeah.
the war, he played for South Carolina. He played, and then he played for
Yeah.
Yeah. There were a lot of during the war that happened.
2000, known as the push-off. It was really funny in Chris's video. He talks with Joey Irwin, who was head cheerleader when I was in school, ended up running a big advertising agency in Greenville. And he said, heck yeah, it was a push-off. I mean,
That's Gardner.
but
Rod Gardner.
it didn't get called. And then I was reading the other night, Holt said, well, there were 29 people on the field. And somebody said, well, Coach, there's only 22 on the field. He goes, no, I said what I said. There were 29 people on the field.
Meaning the refs. Meaning the refs, yeah.
So, but yeah, that one will forever live. And that was like Aaron Hunt, last second field goal.
Yeah.
Then Chad Dean misses a last second field goal to tie Clemson.
Yeah.
2006.
Then Mark Buckholz hits a field goal the last play of the game in Columbia. And then, of course, 2022, Spencer Rattler throws 2 interceptions, but he ends up throwing for 360 yards and 2 touchdowns. And ends Clemson's 40-game home winning streak.
Wait, that's a heartbreaker, you were saying?
It's a heartbreaker for us.
For Clemson, yeah.
Just kidding.
One side or the other.
Just kidding.
Y'all add anything to that, or one that really bothers you? I mean, I was trying to think of other.
Yeah, the 84 game stands out to me
Yeah.
because that was William Perry's last home game.
Mm-hmm.
He had never lost at home. I think we were 25-0-1 at home going into that game during his career, and of course we were on probation, so that was it. His career was over. So he just hated to see his career in that way.
And the other interesting thing during my reading, I was talking to Tim about, and I knew some of it, but we always hear, well, the legislature says Clemson and South Carolina have to play.
That's not true.
That only came up in 1952.
That's true.
Clemson and Maryland decided, hey, we got a bowl bid, we're going to a bowl. And Southern Conference said, nah, we don't want y'all to go in a bowl. And if you go to the bowl, you can't play anybody else. So the legislature comes in and says, Clemson, South Carolina have to play. So 52, the next spring, there's a meeting in Greensboro, and we create the Atlantic Coast Conference. So Clemson, Carolina had rivalry had an effect on helping start the ACC. So we've got a few minutes. Any questions? Any comments? Anybody want to say something?
What's the name of your video?
It's called Bragging Rights. If you'll go to YouTube and type in Bragging Rights, RITES, because this is religious, and also Studio 15 is my company, but you'll pull it up, and it's about an hour 45. And we took great pains to make sure that it presented both sides of the rivalry. We found in selling these at the time DVDs at BILOs all over the state that a lot of Clemson fans just wanted it to be about Clemson, and a lot of South Carolina fans wanted it to be about South Carolina. So sales were kind of in the middle. But we should have made like a version just for Clemson fans, and one just. We were trying to be judicious. Like I remember editing, like, no, timing. It has to be equal time. And all the Clemson fans said, but we've won so many more games, and we're like, but we're in every BILO in the state. I mean, we have to appeal to everybody. So anyway, but you can watch it for free on YouTube. No. My wife threw those out when we got married. And anyway,
it ends in the Holtz.
It was a Holtz-Bowden era.
Holtz-Bowden era is where it ends. But what was cool to me was Tim Bourret was in it.
Yeah, you were a part. This is the first time I've seen him since that.
Jim Phillips, Bob Fulton, King Dixon, a lot of Charlie Bussey, a lot of old-time players, and it really, from early to, and it's got some really neat stories and a lot of fun to watch. So
we were filming at the 2002 game, and I remember I was just a producer, and I had all my camera guys. We were all wearing blue, so I could see them in the stadium, because nobody wears blue to Carolina-Clemson game. So I could just see where they were, and you guys had made it really easy for us to get around. And I was interviewed on the pregame radio show, and I remember walking the press booth, and Jim Phillips says, "Hey, sit here." And Jim Phillips stood up, and I just sat down in his chair and then was interviewed for the thing. But I knew that was very special. And I remember telling Clemson friends of mine, it was like, I got a story for you. Like, this is not when we were texting all the time, but I had a bragging right of my own that I got to sit in Jim's chair right before the broadcast of that game. So,
Speaking of Jim, was it after Jim died that Bob did part of the Clemson Carolina game, or was it another game?
No, it was the Middle Tennessee State game, which was the
and it was a scoring drive.
Yeah, it was a scoring drive. Yeah,
but I knew both Jim and Bob. Knew Jim better because when I covered the Greenville Braves for several years, he did their games.
Right,
and we get to travel with them.
That's right,
Jim's a real nice guy, and his son Jeff, I'm friends with. For longtime Clemson fans, anybody remember who the voice of the Tigers was before Jim Phillips? Bill Goodrich, and his catchphrase was, "Woohoo, Mercy!"
are you talking about Bob Fulton?
No, Bob Fulton.
Okay,
Yeah, but Jim, Bill Goodrich was on before.
Bill Goodrich. Okay.
Before,
right.
I also got in trouble one time for saying, "Oh, this was a good game. We're going back to the Forum and have a good time tonight."
But
I want to tell you guys this. I did hear from some guys that played in the 50s on both teams that there was a party in, I think it was the Sunday, pretty much it went into the week after the South Carolina-Clemson game in Edisto Beach. Somebody had a house, and players from South Carolina and Clemson would find themselves at the beach together. There was some drinking and carousing going on, and just letting you know. But they were all like lighting it up and celebrating. And this happened for many years during the 50s, and this was reported to us by several players on both teams that party. Apparently, coaches didn't show up for that. It was just players. Somebody had a house in Edisto. So just think of that next time you're down in Myrtle Beach.
It makes sense because it was a Thursday. So they
right. So they had the long weekend. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
What is the history of the Rock?
Rock.
Players were Carolina graduates.
Well, the Rock. I Can't know the man's name, but he brought the rock back from Death Valley, California.
S.C. Jones.
S.C. Jones.
Was his
And
name?
it
It was a doorstop.
was a doorstop for Coach Howard. And Coach Howard told Gene Williman, who was the head of IPTAY at that time, get that thing out of here. Go throw it over the fence. Get rid of it. So Gene Williman, I don't know if he had any help or not. Am I on it?
Yeah,
Gene
you are,
Williman
yeah.
came up with
It
the
was his
idea
idea, yeah.
of mounting it at the top of the hill and calling it Howard's Rock.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Well, the first game, 66 Virginia game?
66 Virginia game.
They were down 18 points in the fourth quarter.
35-18. I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they rallied to win. So it's like, from then on, it's like, you know.
There's only been 3 games in Clemson history where we're down by 16 points or more and came back to win. One of them was that Virginia game. Another one was the game we just had.
It was last Saturday. Yeah, if you're not going to give me 110%, keep your filthy hands off my rock. But yeah, that's the history. I mean, it's a pretty neat story how a doorstop went to be. It's now like, I have not been, and I hate to say this, I have not been in the College Football Hall of Fame, but I understand when you walk in the door, there's a Mall of the Rock there. I mean, it is like an iconic thing in college football.
That's a neat story.
Not Clemson, Carolina related, but 1967, I believe it was, might be 66. NC State started out the year 8-0, and
67.
they were 67. And they wore white shoes on defense, and so Clemson came up with the idea. They were playing late in the season. It's probably like next to last game. Of wearing orange shoes. Clemson State had lost to Penn State the weekend before. And then Clemson came out wearing orange shoes and beat them 14-7. And I can't remember who caught the pass to put him ahead, but they said that he caught his pass over Chuck Amato, who went on to be
Chuck the chest.
NC State's head
It was
coach.
Buddy Gore.
Yeah, you're right, Buddy from Conway.
Buddy Gore.
The story I've always heard about that was every hardware store in a close radius of Clemson ran out of orange paint because they had to go buy orange paint to paint the shoes.
Yeah, Herman McGee did all that.
Herman McGee.
Yeah, Herman McGee.
Herman was a long time trainer at Clemson.
South Carolina doesn't have a rock, anything for good luck like that, but if you've ever been to a Buc-ee's, if you go up to Bucky Beaver and you put your hands on him and look at him deeply in the eyes and beg of him, your team could win the game. So I just encourage you, if you're ever at a Buc-ee's, go talk to Bucky about your Tigers or your Gamecocks winning, because it's true, Cobb, that works.
Yeah, I believe it.
You have to rub his teeth?
Yeah. Give him a little kiss.
Somebody
That's
would
what
shove
that's what
him out of the way
delivers
trying
it.
to get a sandwich. Yes.
Tim, got a question for you.
Hey, Jamie. One of my former students.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I was a freshman at 91. Was it the NC State game where we switched to purple?
Mm-hmm.
What drove that?
Yes.
I never asked that.
That actually was kind of the idea of Mr. Bradley. He was talking to, Coach Hatfield was kind of looking for something special in that game, and Mr. Bradley, knowing the history of Clemson, that purple was one of our original color. I think it was actually purple and gold way back when. So he told Coach Hatfield about that, and that's what led to him ordering that purple uniform.
And for those of you who don't know, Mr. Bradley is Bob Bradley. He was the Sports Information Director there for a long time.
Legend.
Just the salt of the earth. Great guy. And South Carolina had a counterpart in Tom Price, who was at USC, who was much the same as Bob.
Right,
Yeah, that's right.
And they're the people who the Bradley Price MVP awards, or Bob Bradley MVP and Tom Price MVP awards, are given in the baseball series each year. And I mean, both those gentlemen were just so respected by the press and by their peers. And I remember Tim, before he was Clemson's Google, he was just a Yankee who came in from Notre Dame. I knew the guy he replaced, but and Tim has carried on in that tradition.
Bradley did the ACC player.
Yes.
Isn't that the football that was in one of the games?
Yeah, this Beverly put this up
Yeah.
here, and we didn't talk about this earlier. This is a rat hat, There's a rat hat inside
I
this.
thought that was Lou Holtz's hairpiece.
No, it's a rat hat. And it must be an old rat hat because it's inside a.
It's
Military.
very- It is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my brother wore a rat
And
hat.
then this football is
1918.
1918.
Wow.
Clemson College 39, South Carolina nothing.
That's from Tim.
So,
Yeah, inside, I don't know when they stopped wearing rat hats, but inside that military hat is a bean.
yeah,
I
rat
think.
hat, yeah, bean,
And,
yeah.
I know they had to wear it at least into the late 60s.
Yeah, that was a thing at Clemson, and my dad went to Georgia Tech, and that was a thing at Georgia Tech too. And you had to write the football scores on your hat. They caught you without your hat, there was a severe
is a-
penalty. And then if Tech beat Georgia, you could take your hat off. And if
That
they
is a
didn't,
World War One hat.
World War One.
Wow.
Okay, wow.
Wow.
Is that from the museum here?
It's from one of my friends. Yes, but
Cool.
we don't own it. But hopefully in the future we might.
We'd like to own it.
Don't return it. It's yours now.
We have a good friend of the museum that loans us a lot of things,
That's
and
cool.
both of those are his. But you never know. I think it'll probably be here for a while.
Okay, anything else?
Laces.
Thank you, Cobb, for doing it.
Yeah.